This is a Gracelets audio presentation from Southern California professional Christian counselor Bill Ferris. You can learn more about Bill and his counseling, speaking, and writing ministry at billferris.com or by visiting him on Facebook at Bill Ferris MPC. And now here's today's Gracelets audio message.
Hi, this is Bill Ferris, and we're back with another Gracelets audio presentation. This time I'm very excited to welcome a guest to our presentation. Her name is Cherie Francis-Boegeman. And Cherie, say hello to everybody.
Hello, everyone.
And we're here to talk about the very, very important topic of, is there life after divorce? Now, Cherie and I have some history together that I'm excited to share with you because we want to invite you to participate, especially if you're here in Southern California, in a divorce recovery workshop that I participate in twice a year with Cherie and her team. And so just before we dive into our topic, Cherie, say just a word about the Divorce Recovery Workshop. How do people find out about it? How long is it? Where is it? A few things like that.
You can find out all the information you need to know on the website, which is Free to Love Again, Divorce Recovery Workshop. So if you just Google Free to Love Again, drw.org. And this was Carl Kickerpill's vision, and I was happy to be able to be a part of this with him.
And this is a 3-day workshop.
Yes.
That people come to. Now, is it only if they've already been through a divorce process that they're invited to participate in this, or can they be separated or considering divorce, or how does that work?
Well, we kind of waffle back and forth on that. And we have had people that are separated. I mean, honestly, what has happened is people have come through the weekend. They've seen, they've participated, they've gone through some of the exercises, and their marriage has actually been restored. So that's why we waffle back and forth. Should it just be for people that are divorced? But we've seen how powerful it is for people that are separated and real close to divorce. So if you're in any of those categories.
Okay. So people could contact you if they have questions. They can go on freetoloveagain.drw.org to get the gateway to the dates. Now, that there is one coming up here in November of 2016.
Yes.
That will be at the early part of the month, and then there'll be another one that you do in the spring.
Correct.
And so there's always a spring and a fall opportunity here locally. So anyway, keep that in mind. We'll get more into that in the second podcast we're preparing for today, where we'll be talking specifically about divorce recovery. But right now, I want to talk about the whole question of, is there life after divorce? So, Cherie, could you just share very briefly a little bit of your story so that people can get a feel for why I invited you to come and speak to these issues?
Sure. I've been married 3 times. I'm very happily married in my third marriage. I was married young at 20 years old in my first marriage, and was going through school. And when I was minoring in psychology, the students came in and said, anybody interested in getting some experience, being counseled to give us experience? And I said, sure. And they identified me in the first session. We need to have you see our instructors. So that was the first indicator that I had a bad marriage. And then I went on to not get healing from that divorce, and basically recreated the same circumstances, even though it looked completely different on the outside. And then it was finally the third time around, I got the help that I needed and got healthy. And now I have a good, healthy relationship, and my kids are healing and finding their path as well.
And your kids are how old now?
My daughter's going to be 25 in November, and my son will be 19. And
so you have lived the life of a single parent.
Yes.
And you know some things about those challenges and the shape of that kind of a life. And we'd love for you to speak a little bit to that here in a minute. But you said something a second ago that was fascinating. You said, I recreated the problems in my first marriage, in my second marriage, but I didn't realize, I didn't see, I didn't recognize from the outside. It didn't look like that's what I was doing. Can you just go a little bit more into what do you mean
Sure.
by that and what you learned the next time around that made such a difference?
Sure. I experienced divorce first when I was in high school. I had a pretty happy childhood camping and moved to a community where they had swim team and couldn't wait to be on the swim team. And my friends, we'd swim all day and during the summertime and then go home and have family meals. And it was in high school that my dad had an affair, and my swim teammates became my stepsisters. And it wasn't, I don't think so much the pain of the divorce, but it was my dad's consistent communication that his affair was more important than my sisters and myself. So that pain of abandonment I carried into future relationships. And I went off to college and got involved with a man. I had left my Christian walk. This man was pursuing me, and it was incongruent with my Christian walk because we got physically involved. And so to resolve that, I decided I better just get married. And when we went off to college together, I was going to college and he was pursuing a certification in massage therapy. And I was very busy working full time, going to school full time, and realized that my husband was home on the couch, pretty much smoking pot and not really moving a lot. And we were getting into arguments, and they were becoming physical. And later, I learned that he had post-traumatic stress. He was older than me and had been a Vietnam vet and had post-traumatic stress, and that's how he was coping with it. So forward the story, I go home for the summer to do my internship, and my parents arranged for me to go. They weren't happy with me marrying this man in the first place, and they were very happy to support me not being married. But I never got the healing from that, never really walked through healing. Went off to do my internship. I met a man that was very exciting to me. He played polo. He spoke French fluently, had an Italian wardrobe, and we started dating. And before I knew it, I again was the sole income provider, and my husband was at home smoking pot on the couch, and I was driving the relationship.
As Yogi Berra would say, it was deja vu all over again. Oh my gosh. Now, you were a believer, you were a Christian from when you were a younger girl in your teenage years and so forth, that you became a believer. And now you're married a third time. Later in your life. And what happened to your Christian walk over all those years? And what did the development of your Christian walk have to do with this marriage you're in now?
I would say when I got into college and no longer my choices were lining up with my Christian walk, and my husband wasn't a Christian at that time. And then going off to college and not having strong roots, I really questioned my faith and pretty much left my walk. After a great deal of pain, and again, marrying another man that was not congruent with my faith, not a believer, and after pain, after all the years of pain, and finally hitting the place of rock bottom, I started returning to the church, and that's where my healing began. And God showed up in a very powerful way. When I first moved back I had moved to Texas because my husband said if he could just do what he loved to do, we would have a happy marriage. So I left a hospital administrative job and a condo that I had just recently bought from my mom's inheritance, and moved to Texas, and he continued to act like a bachelor. So, and relationships aren't always clean and tidy, and we tried to make it work, and I actually had separated there in Texas and moved with some girlfriends that I worked with at a hospital. But in the process of trying to figure out what was going on, I actually became pregnant again, but realized I could not continue and without the support of family and people that I knew well in Texas. So I told my husband that when he was ready to be a married man, his family would be waiting in California. And that's when I returned to the church, and God met me every part of the way. I didn't have a place to live. I didn't have a job. I didn't have childcare. And as I took a step closer to God, He met me every place. I got a beautiful place to live. It was a family friend that this was their retirement home, and they just wanted somebody that would take care of their home, and they didn't charge a lot. And it was a 3-bedroom, garage entry, quiet community with a pool, and a little backyard, and I was able to afford that. I worked registry, and thank God I had a college degree to fall back on, and one that's in demand. So I started to work at a hospital, and was offered a very nice job working in a pediatric hospital as a manager. So that need got met. I even had come from Texas with enough to fill up a small U-Haul truck. And my parents were playing tennis with a friend, and the father unexpectedly passed away. And they said, "We don't know what we're going to do with this household furniture. If you know anybody that can just get rid of it for us." So we got the big U-Haul truck, and my house was furnished.
Now, here you are, you're talking about God meeting you in a time of need, in a time of desperation, a time of disorientation. Your life was really turned upside down. You had 2 children. You were trying to rebuild after a second marriage was ending. And you came to the church. Now, a lot of people say, why would I come to the church at a time of shame and failure and loss and grief? And because there's a feeling out there, isn't there, that the church is not understanding, the church is not accepting, the church is not going to help people whose lives are messy, that the kingdom of God is really kind of the land of together people, who know the Lord so well that they just don't mess up in life, that kind of thing. And so there is a sort of a fear out there that the church is not going to be kind to people who are struggling. What did you find? Did you find unmitigated acceptance and perfect understanding, or something other than that?
Well, Bill, I'd like to say that I felt very accepted, but my story wasn't actually, I wasn't ready to divorce my husband at that point. I was just coming out to California to get support for myself. And so really, when I returned to a church, and it was a very large church that I could get lost in the back, and I went to church to meet God. I didn't go to church for the support. I actually wanted to hide in church.
Thanks for clarifying that.
So I purposely went to a very, very large congregation, and they had stadium seating, and I would walk to the very back of the church and basically cry through every service.
Why were you crying? What were you feeling?
Like I had really messed up with my choices. I was very sad that my marriage wasn't what I thought it would be. And I guess, I was just in pain. I just was in a lot of pain.
So you came to the church because you knew God would be there.
Yeah.
You could connect with God again, but you were not going for connection with other people at that point. You were looking for support from your family and from other sources, but as far as your return to the church, you were trying to pick up a thread of your spiritual maturity and growth and development that had started much younger in your life.
Right.
But was it hard? Did you find that it was difficult to restart your walk with the Lord?
At that point, I was so at the end of myself and realized what I had done wasn't working. And I did feel God's presence and his grace. And even though there was still much more to walk through, I felt God there with me. And I felt his peace.
What would you want to say to someone who might be hearing this, who's going through divorce or something like that, a very life disruptive experience, who is wondering if they can start over with God, or if they can pick up that thread, or even maybe for the first time in their life really come to the Lord just as they are? What would you want to say to them?
That now we're talking about this whole topic of suffering, and even as difficult, and actually, Bill, it was so I did get to this point at the large church. So I'm gonna take a reroute here.
Okay. We can do that.
So I'm going to this large church. I'm starting to get some consistency in my schedule and some routine with my kids. I start to help out because I'm a occupational therapist by background. I'm starting to help out with a program designed to help kids that have challenges be able to have a place where they can go to Sunday school. So I'm starting to develop a community here, and I get to this point, and I'm grappling with my marriage, fighting for my marriage. And it wasn't clean and neat, and it still was a couple more years of separation and back together. But then when I told my husband that we would have to separate again, he said, "No, I'm not going to do this. We're going to have a divorce. I'm not going to do this again." And when I told my supervisor that I was going
This is at the church, in the church program that you were running.
The large church, and the one that I'm a part of a team to assist. They said, if you're going through a divorce, you can no longer serve. And that kind of pulled the rug out from under me, because that was community for me. And at that point, I was I really was grappling and pulled away from that group that was being supportive of me. And it was a little bit later again that I got to this point of extreme suffering, and went to my youth pastor of years ago, and showed up at his front door. And at this point in his life, he was a successful business coach, international business coach, and also a marriage family therapist. And I could tell he was ready for his afternoon nap. And he waved me in and, spent about 2 hours ministering to me, and just said, "You need to get into a family that can really support you."
What a contrast. I mean, you got this message sent to you from the supervisor of the church program that you were volunteering in, that because you were in a divorce situation, because you were divorcing, you were instantly disqualified from continuing in the leadership of that program. No further questions were needed to be asked, apparently. We talked in the car on the way here about just sometimes people send you messages, maybe they don't even know they're sending. But sometimes, when you're going through suffering, when you're going through divorce, when you're going through another life-disrupting time, grief, loss, whatever it might be, the feeling of not being understood, not being given an opportunity to go through a process with a steady community, that can be very profound. But you were able to pivot, and you remembered a relationship where there was the prospect of real understanding and opportunity to kind of grab something firm again. And so when you found that old youth pastor of yours who was no longer a youth, neither of you were no longer youths, but he was able to open a new door for you that helped you get grounded again.
Yeah, he said, "You need to get into a community where they can love you and help walk you through this." And then that's where I met you, Bill.
Yes, that is where we met. And that was such a privilege to be able to be a community of healing and hope for you and others that God brought our way in that season of our lives, as he did.
I do want to say, so this whole notion of suffering, and I remember one of your sermons, you were telling the story about was it the genocide in Rwanda?
Oh, yes.
And
Yes.
what Mercury?
What
was
Immaculate
Immaculate?
Ilabagaza? Yeah.
Okay,
One of my
so
heroes.
she could hear. So she was inside her house, and 20 people in the size of a bathroom, and she couldn't even bend her legs. And they knew that she was around somewhere, but they didn't know where they were hidden.
Right.
And day after day, she's in this position, and they're calling for her. And you're reading this book, and you said that she wanted to return to this place because she felt the presence of God.
Yeah, I got to say,
so
I mean,
intensely.
that story of Immaculate Ilabagaza in her book, Left to Tell, is so powerful. And I quoted in my book, How Healed Do You Want to Be? She's actually one of my heroes in that she was hidden in actually a pastor hid her in his bathroom, 3x5 bathroom with 3 other women for 3 months in the African heat and everything else. And she lost tremendous weight. I mean, I can't imagine the suffering. But she said, I was really going to miss that place because in that place, in her lowest low, it was a portal that opened her life up to God as never before. And it was, if she said, it was a portal to heaven, not in a physical sense, not in a social sense, but her spirit was so lifted by how God met her. And I think that must be what you related to and we're remembering.
And I hung on to that, and I remembered that. And now as I lead the divorce recovery workshop, I let people know that this pain that you are in, we're almost envious of where God is going to meet you because he meets you so powerfully there. His presence is so thick that it is a unique and amazing time. And that was true. God met me there and had some very intimate, very physical and tangible presence of him during that time.
Now, so your spiritual life was really getting revived.
Yes.
And you were getting a very fresh start in a very profound way with the Lord. So all of your problems are solved. I mean, life was cake after that. Being a single parent was easy. No other relationship struggles. Everything was good to go, correct?
Yeah. Sadly, that was the beginning of the beginning of the healing journey.
So this is a journey. This is a process, and it's not always a smooth process. It's not always a mess-free process.
That's right.
But you do put one foot in front of another.
Yes.
And you see God work and you see yourself change and you see yourself learn and grow. How are you different now than you were the day that let's say the day that you showed up at your old youth pastor's door? What's happened to you?
I was thinking about that, and I think the biggest change for me is I have slowed down in a huge way.
Wow. Slowing down is an important part of the process. Yeah. We're going to talk about that in the next episode. But tell more about what you mean by that.
I'm much more reflective of what is going on with me. I'm much more questioning God. You know, it's like there's so many different ways we can spend our day. There's so many different, even good things, even good things that we can spend our time. And I just slow down and make sure I spend time and ask God, what is it that you want me to do today? And that slowing down part, really reflecting, am I reacting? Am I doing something out of pain? Am I doing something to avoid pain? Or am I being careful? And how does this fit with how I want my life to be used?
So you're much more self-aware.
Yes.
You're much more aware of the consequences of your choices, your decisions, the moments of your life. And it slowed you down. It's made you more mindful, and it's made you more open to the Holy Spirit, how he's working in your life. And you're obviously very connected to other people who you consider to be wise and helpful and important to your growth and process. And Well, this is a good report, Cherie. So, is there life after divorce?
Yes. I I go through things on more of a mental picture. And when I was walking through the divorce, and it's, we talked about how to walk through it well, and well doesn't necessarily mean not suffering or not having pain. And when I really delved into and did some journaling and very structured answering questions and looking at myself, life was very gray. It was almost like I would imagine after a volcano had gone off and just no color, no life, just gray. And it was just a matter of having a schedule and putting one foot in front of the other. And I remember slowly color started to show back up.
It's a great image.
Yeah, almost like a flower here or a flower there. And it was slow, and there were moments and like we'll talk more in the next session, but one of the things was being grateful, so having a grateful journal. And I recognized that when I was sitting on the side of the soccer field watching my son play soccer, that my mind was not on myself.
Wow.
I had an interruption on the pain, and I was completely and fully present and enjoying just watching my son play soccer. And that was a distinction that I hadn't had before. And then there was one occasion shortly thereafter where I was watching a TV show and laughed audibly. And my kids came running down the stairs. Like, what was that? What was that? And so it was
the color came back into life piece by piece.
Piece by piece. Mm-hmm.
Well, we are so glad to be able to share this story in the hopes that it will not only be important to those who have gone through divorce or are going through divorce or separation, but also for those of us that are walking with people or have walked with people through this kind of life-disrupting experience, that we will be mindful, that we will take it slow, that we will be careful to be attentive to the Holy Spirit and attentive to our own process as we share the walk of others going through a valley of change and even pain like this. This has been the first of two parts. The second part, we will talk about divorce recovery and divorce care and kind of the next steps of healing and renewal, restoration that come as we have kind of brought us up to this point today. We thank you for joining us, Cherie, and thank you for listening. Those of you that are hearing this podcast, this is another Graceless audio production, and I'm Bill Ferris. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.
This has been a Graceless audio presentation from Bill Ferris, MPC. For more brief and full-length audio messages from Bill, visit his page at Spreaker.com. And don't forget to share your comments with Bill by writing him at billferris@billferris.com. Thanks for listening.